Good morning, sir.
So we are
मैं
not
मनीषा मैम मैंने रिकॉर्ड भी स्टार्ट किया लाइव ऑन यूट्यूब भी किया
okay. Namaste and wishing everyone a very pleasant and beautiful morning. Bombay Teachers Training College is delighted to welcome all the dignitaries, school teachers from different schools. Our resource person for today's session, Ms. Priyanka Babbar, alumna of BTTC, and all the participants joining the third session of this week-long FDP webinar series for school teachers organized by BTTC. The topic for today is the power of storytelling in education. Daily prayer is essential for our emotional, mental, and spiritual well being. So let us seek the blessings and pray together.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ अस्तो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Before we begin with this session, let me brief you about the previous session. The technical session 2 that happened yesterday was conducted by our alumna Miss Asmin Zubin Bania on the topic metamorphosis, where she explained the importance of co-curricular activities. She also discussed various tools for online teaching. Furthermore, she shared some useful tips which teachers should use while teaching. Ms. Azmin made the session very engaging and interactive, which was highly appreciated by the participants. The session was moderated by Dr. Neelu Verma and supported by Ms. Priyanka Hasija, Ms. Malvina D'Souza, and other volunteers. मेरे पास आओ मेरे दोस्तों एक किस्सा सुनो कई साल पहले की बात है यस किस्से स्टोरीज कथाएं कहानियां we all have heard stories and we all love stories are extremely powerful. I have not come across anyone who doesn't like hearing a story. As adults, we often remark that children love stories, but this is only half truth. Adults too love stories as much as children do. Not only we love hearing stories, but also we love telling stories. There is a story behind everything. The story of our day, the story of our life, workplace stories, stories of our friends, relatives, and etc. Stories define us, shape us, control us, and make us. Not every human culture in the world is literate. but every single culture tells stories. Storytelling is the oldest form of teaching. Teachers should be storytellers. When you tell a story, there is a magical moment. The children sit enthralled, mouths open, eyes wide, and curious to know what next. So, how do one become a storyteller? Becoming a storyteller takes a lot of effort and inclination on our part. So, what's stopping us? Let's learn from a storyteller, none other than Miss Priyanka Babbar, the tips and tricks of telling an effective story. Now, I request Miss Monica Dixit to introduce our resource person for this session. Over to Monica.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning to one and all. On behalf of Bombay Teachers Training College, I, Miss Monica Dixit, take this opportunity to welcome everyone to today's session. Sam Walter once quoted, "Nothing sticks in your head better than a story." Stories express the most complex ideas in the most digestible ways. As we are going to engage ourselves in the amazing session on the power of storytelling in education, it is my true privilege to introduce to our resource person for today's session, Ms. Priyanka Babbar, who will take us on a beautiful journey on the art of storytelling and enlighten us with her expertise knowledge. Ms. Priyanka Babbar is the Artistic Director of Small Tales Storytelling and Young Thespian Theatre Program. She has successfully completed the International Summer School Program in Physical Theatre from London International School of Performing Arts in the year 2017 and is a certified drama facilitator from Theatre Professionals. She has conducted over 300 storytelling workshop sessions across India and around the world for various organizations and schools like American School of Bombay, Aditya Birla World Academy, KPMG India, Isha Foundation, Stanford American School, Singapore, to name a few. She is also a senior drama faculty member at Hill Spring International School in Mumbai. She has trained over 200 teachers in the art of storytelling and using drama for learning. She has also choreographed and directed over 30 theatre productions for schools in Mumbai. Having taught various subjects during her teaching career, she believes that children learn best through stories and drama. Through her unique methodology, by incorporating elements of theatre, art, music, and movement, she engages all kinds of learners and encourages the children to explore their imagination, thus paving the way for them to become empathetic, open-minded thinkers and problem solvers. Besides this, she has been an active member of theatre groups in various places and have performed at festivals in India and around the world. In the words of Brandon Sanderson, the purpose of storytelling is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon. Ma'am, we are truly privileged to have you on the VDTC virtual platform. Now, I hand over the session to Ms. Priyanka. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Monica. And thank you, Manisha ma'am. Thank you, Lubna ma'am. And thank you, Balani sir, and everybody here who's spending their morning with me. And I hope to make that as meaningful as I can and give you value for all the time that you are giving to me. You know, they say that time is the most valuable thing somebody can give it to you. And I truly believe that. And I really am so grateful to all of you for being here this morning. And let's jump in straight to what I have to share. Storytelling is something I consider the most powerful weapon in the world. And I'm going to tell you how through this session. And I hope by the end of it, you believe that too. Okay, so let's begin. Firstly, there was a question posed in the beginning on your screens, which had asked you to type out in the chat box. What do you think is the purpose of education? Now, especially I ask this question to all of you because you have chosen this way of life for yourselves. And that's why I would love to know your thoughts on that. Unfortunately, nobody has written the answer in the chat box. So I'm going to force you to do that and write it. Until you don't, I'm not going to continue further, because what we're going to learn today is really based on that understanding of education and its purpose. So I'm just going to give you a minute to actually write the answer to that question in the chat box here. Okay, we have 54 participants. I would expect at least 50 answers in the chat box, okay, in 1 minute. So your time starts now.
Priyanka, I guess I can't see any chat.
Yeah, I don't know why. Are you guys typing the answers in the chat box? Because I can't see any either. That's the question. I'm just going to expand my screen. What, according to you, is the purpose of education? I am a strict teacher, so you will have to do as I say today. Okay, we have some answers coming in. Great. Okay. Mold the personality of a child and holistic development. To share the knowledge that you have to the best way possible. Provide knowledge, belief, customs that will help the new generation. That's a very important word that Shambhavi has said, the new generation. Okay, so we're going to keep that in mind when we have these discussions ahead. One's life, young ones, a path to find their purpose in life. Wow, I love that one. To discover oneself. Yes, very important. Self-realization, knowing your own potential. To grow together. Give and take of ideas, logic, and virtues. Okay. For self-realization, knowing one's potential, all around development of students, intellectual knowledge rather than content knowledge. Yes, thank you for that. Education of sharing of what we have, bring about all-round development of the child, teach what we know and have learned and experienced. Okay. Own ideas with students, empower learning in all sectors. Yes, very true. Gaining knowledge, live a successful life. Success, yes, that is a very important word that we have in our lives today, and everyone's perception of success is very different. Improve knowledge, way of living, as well as social and economic status throughout life. Okay, great. I love the answers that are coming in, and what I realized, even I did the same talk for about 100 teachers last week with a group called Teachers Help Teachers India. And what I discovered from teachers, like there is a difference when we're talking about the same thing to trainee teachers and to teachers who are already working in the field. Satisfactory, successful life, all-round development of a child, all kinds of development. Yes, and the character of the student. Okay, thank you for your answers. I'm going to tell you more through this. So, okay. Yes, this is a great answer. Actually, I was waiting for this one to come, and I'm so glad it's come without me having to put it out there. Purpose of education is an important tool which helps a person to make the society a better one in every aspect. Thank you, Mitali. Thank you for this answer. And I think you've really, summed it up beautifully, because when we as teachers are teaching our students, we are looking at them as individuals. And that's why a lot of the answers that you gave were from a very microscopic point of view. And it's great to have that, because that gives you the purpose to do what you do every single day as teachers. But what we forget in that is the macro view of education. And I'm as guilty as all of you, because we get so involved with the children that we teach that we forget to look at the larger picture of the education. Why has the system of education and schooling and college been created is to keep the human race in a set format, which is for the betterment of mankind, right? And it, for me, parents, because their view of the world is just around their own child, and they want their child to grow up to be a good citizen, a good human being, get a job, become successful. And unfortunately, the definition of success in the world that we have today is by the balance in your bank accounts, right? And you all will agree with me on that. And unfortunately, we teachers do not have that. We probably have the lowest bank accounts amongst all our peers. I too, like even after being in education for over 15 years, I mean, the kind of money I have made in 15 years, my friends make in 1 year. Okay. And unfortunately, people from far away will observe them as more successful than me. But I do not value success by the bank balance that I have in my bank account. And I hope you don't too. And I understand you don't, and that's why you've chosen to be here, because you really want to contribute to making this world a better place, right? And for me personally, when I was thinking about the answer, because I have to think about the answer that I have asked you, for me, the purpose of education is to solve all kind of problems, from providing employment, to make our children employable, to make them a better human being, kind, loving towards others, open-minded, helpful, creative, to be able to express themselves, and all the wonderful answers that you gave, all of those. So for me, the purpose of education is to solve all the problems. And unfortunately, I'm very sorry to say, we as educators, I also included, have been unsuccessful, because the problems in our world still continue to exist. And I think about it a lot, okay, because I am a very sensitive human being, and I look at things happening around me, and I feel like I'm responsible for them to a very large extent. And I have been unsuccessful all this while to be able to resolve those problems. And then I go back to think how I can actually make a difference to actually making to get rid of those problems, whether the problem is of gender inequality or social status amongst the higher caste and the lower caste, or income inequality, or environmental pollution, or noise pollution, or disrespecting certain cultures and people. So I feel responsible for all of that, and I hope you do too, because you're the ones who are going to go tomorrow and try to make those changes in the world. And trust me, it's not an easy task. You've chosen the most difficult job in the world, and I'm really proud of you for doing that. To fight against all the odds, to try and change the world that we have been brought up in, to try and understand why these things exist and how we as educators can change them around us. So hats off to all of you guys for taking up the responsibility to solve all the problems of the world. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next thing that I want to do with you. I'm not sure if you're already aware that I'm going to be picking up certain people right from the list that I have randomly, and you will have to unmute yourself and show me your faces, because I want to make sure that you're doing what I'm asking you to do, okay? Because if I was in the physical space in the college, having you in front of me, I know that you would be paying attention, unless you were like me sitting at the back and, just munching on snacks or something. I did that in college. I'm admitting that in front of all my professors today. But I hope you're participating actively, because I'm going to be asking you to do some exercises with me to understand the impact of stories in our lives. Okay, so the first exercise, I will just share my screen. Thanks, Priya, for the answer. To behave ourselves and to communicate with the society and the world around us. Behave ourselves is very important, especially for the people who spit around us, right? Okay, let's move to the next slide. So I'm not going to do a full screen because then my cursor disappears. I'm going to try and just expand it to maximum possible way so that all of you can view my screen. Okay. Now, I hope all of you have a sheet of paper next to you. You had been asked to keep it ready. It can be any sheet of paper, A4 size, a notebook, it's absolutely fine, okay? So what I want you to do is, if this is your paper, I want you to fold it into four. Fold it twice so that you automatically have 4 parts of your paper, okay? So I'm gonna give you about 10 seconds to do that. And once you're done, I'm gonna ask you to draw a few things. Professors, I hope you are doing it too because I will pick one of you. Okay? So, I hope you are ready. I will announce a few objects and you have to draw them one by one. You have to make a really quick sketch. It's not an art exercise. You can just make like a rough doodle kind of thing as well because you get only 30 seconds to do that. Okay? So, the first thing that I want you to draw in one of the sections, okay, because you're going to make 4 drawings. So in one of the sections, I want you to draw a house, okay, and your time starts now. You don't have to raise your hand, Smita. It's fine. I'll pick anybody. Even if they don't raise their hand, I will pick them. I especially pick up children who don't raise their hands. Okay, done? Let's move to the next object, okay? The next object you're going to draw, or not object, but the picture that you're going to draw is of a ballet dancer. And your time starts now. It's a difficult one, so a rough doodle is also fine. And if you do get time, if you do it faster, you can even color it. It's a choice you have. Okay, ready for the next one? Okay, I'll give you 10 more seconds. I can see Supriya's drawing still, so I'm going to give her time because I can see her. Ballet dancer, okay? Next, I want you to draw a picture of a family. A family. Okay. Just 10 more seconds for family. And the last one you're going to draw is a football player.
Ma'am, what did you say the last one, ma'am? I couldn't hear you.
Football player.
Participants, please mute yourself.
Okay, last 10 seconds to finish all the drawings if you want to just complete them, because I may pick you to show it to me. So I hope your football player doesn't look like a snake or something like that. Okay. I think what you can do when you're showing your picture is you can actually just fold that much part of the picture and hold it right in front of the camera like this so that everybody can see it. Okay, so I will tell you to show me what you've made. It will be great if everyone can just put the camera on. Don't unmute yourself. Just put your cameras on for the first object, the house. Okay, and show it to me like this on your screens. As close as you can bring so that I can actually see it, because they're only outlines. And you can also just peep so you can see what everyone else has also drawn. Yeah. Manisha ma'am, only the house. So just fold the paper and show only the house. Okay, great. Lots of you have not shown it to me yet. I'm waiting for the cameras to be turned on. Everyone, come on. Okay, very good. I hope you're also peeping and seeing what everyone else has drawn. Rashmi, can you bring it a little closer to the camera? Yeah, I can see it now. I think you'll have to just turn it around and make it straight for the camera. Okay, very good. Yeah, do you see everyone's as well? They are all very similar to each other, right? They're so cute. I love this artwork. But I will be honest, you're not as good as my students. They are amazing. And you know, that happens when we grow up. We think we're not great artists because we haven't been doing it for a long time. But thank you for sharing. Okay, moving on to the next item, the ballet dancer. Again, just fold it this much and bring it close to the screen so I can see it like that. The ballet dancer. Manisha ma'am's ballet dancer is looking like a belly dancer to me. I think she heard belly dancer.
Yeah, I heard belly only, belly dancer.
Okay, no problem. Belly dancer is also fine. It serves the purpose of the exercise. No problem at all. Shambhavi's belly dancer is a stick man. What is this, Shambhavi? Where is the costume?
The ballet dancer was in a hurry, ma'am, so he just to draw the stick.
Please also peep and see what other people have drawn. Okay, they're very interesting drawings. Aisha, are you an artist, Aisha? Do you sketch? It looks like you do, actually. Okay, I can see these very cute drawings. So why does the second page not have these? Salome, Charmin, Meenakshi, Komaljeet, Shraddha, Mandeep ma'am, Dhara, Inshira. Why aren't you showing us your drawings?
Dr. Manisha, sorry to interrupt. I request you, the host should be putting the view on gallery, because YouTube people cannot see what is happening in the activity. So host, please make sure that gallery view is put up for the YouTube viewers. Thank you.
Yeah, ma'am.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah. Okay, let's move to the third item, third picture, family. Show me your family pictures. Wow, Monica, such a large family. Is it even allowed with the kind of population we have? Yeah, okay. Great. Why is only Manisha ma'am showing her drawings? Where are the other professors? What is going on? I'm very strict with my participants. Everyone has to show me the pictures. Ansari sir, what is this? Just because I'm not your student anymore.
And still I am preparing. Okay. I am not that good in drawing, Monica.
It's okay.
Priyanka.
Look at your students' drawings. I'm sure it's not worse than this.
I'm looking at that drawing and I'm feeling shy to show my drawing.
Oh, come on. Now, Ansari sir, I'm going to put you in the spotlight. The last one, football player, you have to show. Okay, come on. Everyone, go to football player now. Yes. Great. Look at Rishita's drawing, Ansari sir. Then you will say that your drawing is worse than that. It's so cute. It's just like a rectangle person. It's too cute. But thank you all for sharing. It was beautiful. And it was kind of an eye-opening, I hope, for you as well. Because what I'm going to show you next is, okay, before I move to what I want to show you, I want you all to think the house that you drew. Do any of you or have any of you ever had a house like that of your own? No, right? And yet, each of you drew that. Like, I think 99% of the participants drew the same kind of house with a sloping roof and the door. Yeah, which we drew. I have drawn those as a child too. I probably still do those. I do those drawings. And why do we draw these houses when we don't even live in them? Because those are the houses that we saw in the storybooks that we read while growing up. And we still look at those houses in the books that we read. Yeah? So that was the first one. The second one was a ballet dancer. I'm going to show you the picture of a ballet dancer. And these are ballet dancers that I saw. Okay, when I went to the Sydney Opera House, there was a ballet performance. And these are the ballet dancers that I saw. Okay. Okay, I don't know where they disappeared. 1 second. Huh? Just give me a second. Okay, I'm really sorry. I don't know why this image of the ballet dancer has disappeared. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you that a lot of those ballet dancers were male. There were about 200 dancers on stage, and out of those 200 ballet dancers, there were more than 100 male ballet dancers. And my point of saying this was that all of your ballet dancers were females, and even the belly dancer that Miss Manisha drew, because there are male belly dancers as well. But we as a society and human beings have come to this understanding that ballet is meant only for girls. And that happens even in schools. Like, parents of boys would never even think of enrolling the boy into a ballet class. It's just not understood or accepted. And even if the boy really as a child wants to enroll, he's made fun of. And that happens. I've seen that happening to my own students. So there is a boy who wants to, like, loves ballet and all of that, but he won't join the class because he's too ashamed of his own feelings. So as you rightly said, the purpose of education is to allow our students to be able to express themselves, to be honest with their own selves. And yet we as a society have been unsuccessful in doing that, right? And there is a great Kathak dancer amongst us as well, you know, our own teacher at the college. And he actually will be the best person to even tell you the kind of challenges anyone faces if it's against the norm of the society. Okay, it can be just with your own parents, your siblings, your extended family, your peers, your colleagues, your students, and yet that's the reason a lot of men are unable to express themselves in that way. And you know, Rajiv sir has been able to do that because he probably believed in himself much more than other people did. But not everyone is as strong a personality as him. And that is why it is very important for us teachers to identify those people in our classroom when we are working with them every single day, and to allow them to be who they are. And I'll tell you something that I do with my students all the time, because I'm a drama teacher now. I've become a drama teacher in the last 5 years. But before that, I was a regular teacher in the classroom. And what I do in my drama performances is that there is a script, and I give them the list of characters that will perform in the story. And irrespective of the fact whether they're a boy or a girl, everybody auditions for any kind of part that they want to play. So if the part is of an old woman, all the boys are allowed to audition for it. And I'll be very honest, I don't make the selections. The other children who are watching the audition are making the choices. And it has happened more often than not that it's the other gender children who get picked out. So if a boy auditions for an old woman, they vote. Okay, so I say, okay, whoever thinks that Pratyush was a good old lady, vote for Pratyush. And Pratyush has had like 14 hands up. So everyone really thinks that Pratyush is the best person to play the old woman. And vice versa. If the girl thinks she can be like Thakur and she does a good act of being a Thakur in the audition, then the kids vote for her. And it's, I'll give you a very funny incident that happened. I wanted to do a play where these two characters were bad moods. Okay, they were bad moods. So they would grab onto people, and people would have these fits of anger, and they would get angry at everyone else. My idea was that these two characters need to be twins because they are always together, right? And then as people get angry, they split up and grab them by the neck or by the body. So when I took auditions, I had already, as teachers, we all go with this fixed notion that we have. I already thought that these two boys look similar in size, at least the height is the same, the body structure is the same. They can be the best twins. But because I follow the rule of letting them audition for it, I let everyone audition. And the joke was that the children voted for the tiniest girl in the class and the largest, chubbiest boy in the class to play these two bad moods in my class. And I was like, in no land do they look like twins. But I still let them play the part. And instead of identical twins, they were fraternal twins. And I explained the concept to them that you can be very different even though you are twins. And you can look different. You may have different personalities. You may have different sizes. And that's okay. But it was a challenge for me to actually do that, because I allow my children to express them the way they want to express themselves. Okay, so this is just one anecdote from my life. I'm going to move on. The picture of the family that you shared, right? So you all drew two parents, two children, or one child. Some had a dog and all of that. But we all now as adults know that there are different kinds of families. There are parents who've adopted. There can be two fathers who've adopted a baby. There can be two mothers who have given birth. One of them may have given birth. There may be parents who have divorced, and there may be single parent households. There may be remarriages, and the idea of the stepmother, which has been in our stories, is highly untrue and misleading for young children. But these are the things that we as educators now have to become mindful of, because we all are in the same system. We all think that that's the perfect family. We all think that ballet dancers and any kind of dancer has to be a woman. And the last one, the picture of a footballer, most of them were boys. Even though we all have watched the film Chak De India, it still doesn't occur to us that football players can be women too. Okay? And I grew up with this story where I was told that you shouldn't go out to play in the sun because you will become dark, you will have chapped knees, and you may have these marks for life, and nobody will marry you if you don't look a certain way. I have been brought up with these stories. And only do I today realize how dangerous these stories can be for anybody's well-being, because they are not allowing us to be who we are. And the other day, somebody asked me a question: if there was one thing in the world you would have wanted to do, which you haven't done, I said, I would have loved to be a gymnast. But my mom never let me go into sports because she thought that I would not look good enough to get married to. And I'm still not married, so she's not she's not achieved what she wanted to achieve. But my point is, these are the kind of stories we all are brought up with, and especially women. I mean, we live in a society where women are highly oppressed. Men have their challenges, as I just spoke about it earlier, but the narrative is highly patriarchal. So I'm going to come to that a little later. So this was just one glimpse into how the stories that we read and listen to can affect us. There is a very beautiful and talented writer called Chimamanda Adichie. She's Nigerian, and I have watched her TED Talk a couple of times. It's the most wonderful and the most powerful TED Talks of all times on storytelling. And instead of me talking about it, I would like you to watch her. She speaks beautifully, and I'm just going to share with you something from her talk. Okay, I would like to know if everyone can see my screen clearly. Can one of you tell me, is the whole screen visible?
No, full screen is not visible, Priyanka.
So I haven't put on full screen, because I lose my cursor.
Yeah. So click one, stories in literature, that is visible.
Go on. Are you able to hear it?
Yes.
I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think 4 is probably close to the truth. So I was an early reader. I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think 4 is probably close to the truth. So I was an early reader, and what I read were British and American children's books. I was also an early writer. And when I began to write at about the age of 7, stories in pencil with crayon illustrations that my poor mother was obligated to read, I wrote exactly the kinds of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. They played in the snow. They ate apples. And they talked a lot about the weather, how lovely it was that the sun had come out. Now, this despite the fact that I lived in Nigeria, I had never been outside Nigeria. We didn't have snow, we ate mangoes, and we never talked about the weather because there was no need to. My characters also drank a lot of ginger beer because the characters in the British books I read drank ginger beer. Never mind that I had no idea what ginger beer was. And for many years afterwards, I would have a desperate desire to taste ginger beer. But that is another story. What this demonstrates, I think, is how impressionable and vulnerable we are in the face of a story, particularly as children. Because all I had read were books in which characters were foreign, I had become convinced that books, by their very nature, had to have foreigners in them and had to be about things with which I could not personally identify.
Okay, so, and this is something that actually happens a lot in the classroom. I'm also taking a writing workshop for young children, about 9 to 12-year-olds, and I asked them to write a story about a superhero. And out of 10, 8 of them had characters with English names, like Kathy and Mrs. Mrs. Robinson, and things like that. And I wondered why these children are writing these kind of stories. And that's exactly what Chimanda talks about, that because of the literature that they read, they are all are reading Nancy Drews, and they are reading Howdy Boys, or Harry Potter is a very favorite amongst young people now. So the point is, all of these stories are from foreign lands, written by foreign people, and that's why their characters are living the kind of life that we don't live here. But unfortunately, in Indian literature, we do not have those kind of stories. I don't blame them for it, but it is something that we as educators must be mindful of. Because if we are trying to adapt these stories in the classroom, it's very good, it's very important, and it is an absolute need for us to translate it into the Indian context. And I can share what I do with them in the class. Like I was just telling you the story about the bad mood, the two characters that I had to pick in the performance. After reading the story, I realized that all the characters were Mrs. Robinson, and there's a washerwoman, they go to the laundry and all of that. So I changed the context and I made a dhobi who comes and collects clothes. There was a sweeper. We have the concept of that. And it's also important for them to play these characters, because for them, these are all these people who exist but don't matter to their lives, and they're invisible to their eye, because the kind of world we have, everybody is looking up to Bollywood actors, or race car drivers, or football players, and forgetting the existence of these very important people in our lives, like cleaners and helpers and housekeeping staff and servers at restaurants. So people behind the scenes who are important to the world are very important to be represented in the stories that you create in the classroom or you narrate in the classroom. Even though they do not exist, or in the story that you may have picked a book for some purpose, but it's very important for you to then put these characters, change the names, make them Indian, make them relatable and connectable, so that these kids, as they grow, start to write their stories and not of other people who they've never seen in their lives. Okay? Yeah. So I'm going to move on to another exercise. Okay. Now, those who didn't show me the pictures, you all will definitely have to do this. Okay. And I'm going to ask you to do it. Okay. So I'm going to show you a picture. What I want you to do is write the first two sentences of this picture. Like, what are the, it's a story. You have to start the story. Once upon a time, there was la 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 la. You will complete the first two sentences of this story, the picture that I showed to you. Okay, this is an exercise which I did last week with my 6-year-olds. And I'll tell you why it was an eye-opener for me. And let's see if it opens our eyes as well. Yeah, the picture. You have to write only the first two sentences of the story that this is, okay? And this is the picture. And I will give you 2 minutes to do that. Don't think so much, just write. I will pick anybody. So you will have to unmute and tell me what you wrote. Last 30 seconds. I'm looking at the list and I'm picking out who all are going to narrate the first 2 lines that they've written. Okay, I'm going to ask Ranjit to unmute himself and tell us what he wrote. Ranjit.
Yes, this picture tells me that the two boys were sitting together. One of the boys said, "Hey, look, I made a paper plane. So can you make it the paper plane for me too also? Same way."
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Ranjit. Okay, let's have Tanya.
Ma'am, I'll continue or say the own story that I've written.
Just tell me what you've written, the first 2 lines of your story.
So, once upon a time on a rainy day, Kevin and John wanted to go out to play. But unfortunately, they couldn't. As the time passed, they decided to sit and make objects out of colorful paper. And they decided to make a paper plane.
Great, perfect. Thanks, Tanya. Can I have Mandeep, ma'am? Mandeep, ma'am, are you here?
May I try? This is Neelu
Priyanka,
Verma.
shall I try? Priyanka.
No, I will ask Mandeep ma'am to come back whenever she does. See, these are excited students who don't want the other students to let them answer. Okay.
No, we are
Rajiv,
covering up
sir?
for Mandeep ma'am.
I know that. We all do that. Rajiv, sir, are you here?
I think
See, now
yeah.
these students now are seeing the teachers who are not attending, huh? Okay. Let's have Rishita. Are you here? Okay. Ansari, sir?
Yeah, what I wrote, the story is very simple. Once upon a time, there were two kids, they were playing together. One kid was very serious, and the other kid was in a play off mode. He might be, he or she, I don't, because maybe you are looking for the gender part. So I don't want to go into the gender part. So I thought,
Just write
better
what
to.
you saw. Yeah, don't think so much.
No, what I wrote, the two kids who were there, one kid is trying to disturb the other, and the other kid is quite, what we say, serious type of person. They're just doing what the person wants to do. That's it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, sir. Last one, I'm going to pick, who should I pick? Sharda Bingi. Sharda, could you share what you've written?
Can you just put on your camera, please?
Or just unmute, whatever you can.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I have written, actually, I have thought of it. Can I share the words which I have thought of?
Yes, please.
I thought, yeah. I have thought, the two children of mine, I have two kids, Gautam and Gaurav, and I thought of them. And they are, doing craft work, and they are writing their own dream on it. And one child has already done, and he flied over it. He felt one day I'm going to make that true. I'm going to become, I had written on that, and the next younger one is trying to do it. Looking at his my
Sharda, just 2 sentences. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
So much, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, so what was common among all of these stories that you all shared? And it's exactly what my 6-year-olds did. They all said that there were two boys and they are trying to make an aeroplane. And what I did was, the activity was just for them to share the story. But what I did was, I told them I want to share the story now, what I thought is happening. Okay. And I'm going to take you back to the picture. Um, okay. And here the picture is. So, what I said, once upon a time, there was a girl called Fatima, and there was a boy called Rahul. They sat on the mat and started folding paper. And that's this kind of story I started. There was a longer version of it, but my objective was this, that, and when I did this, I asked my children what they thought was different. And then they said, you said that one is a girl and one is a boy. And what I had slyly done through this kind of a story was, number one, made it okay for girls not to look a certain way, because as I also noticed in my own class, there were two girls with really short hair. All the girls wear shorts and t-shirts. So why is it that we are giving this kind of an image that anyone with short hair and t-shirt shorts is a boy? Okay, because in reality girls do have short hair and girls do wear those kind of clothes. So that was number one. Number two was that I made it okay for a girl to play with a boy. And this is a big problem, teachers. Like, I every day feel terrible about the fact that the boys and the girls are made to stand in different lines, are made to sit separately in the class. And this is the worst thing about our society. The worst. It's the poison. I would call it the poison, because that is what results in them thinking of each other differently, also contributing to the fact that they are different and they are in opposite teams and they are in some way against the other, and it takes gender sensitivity out of the window. The boys then do not know how to behave around girls. And I hate the fact that there are schools which are made separately for boys and made separately for girls. And I'm, I'm sure you all belong to those schools, because those are good schools. They are good schools in the world that we live in. And those girls do not know how to behave around boys. So they try and get attention from them the wrong way. We have social media now, which did not exist when we were growing up. So it is a very dangerous zone for our young children. And the boys do not know how to behave around girls. And that's why there is an increased uh, uh, problem of gender inequality. There is disrespect, there is insensitivity towards the girls, and there is shaming of the girls. The fact that I just shared earlier, that the boys would audition for girls parts and get the part by common vote and their own consent, and guess who would have the biggest problem? The mother. The mother would call me up and say, oh my God, my son is playing a woman. It's so shameful. And I would have to really sit her down and calm her down and explain that it's the most beautiful thing, according to me, that a boy with his own choice is okay to play a girl, which means he's sensitive and he's respectful and he's comfortable in his own skin. And that is something we all need to start questioning. I did a webinar for Akanksha Foundation where there were like 400 children listening to me when I spoke of this. And the other speaker was a very well-renowned film writer. And he said, but you know, times are changing and women are this and they are coming up and all of that. But I said, if I ask you to wear a sari and go out on the street, are you going to be comfortable with it? He said, no. And the reason for that is, it is a matter of shame. Being a woman wearing bangles is a matter of shame. And when I told this story of the two, one girl and one boy, to my 6-year-olds, and this is what the impact of stories is, and I'm going to tell you, when I showed them the next picture, I'm going to show you the next picture. Immediately after this exercise, I showed them the next picture and I said, I want you to start this story and tell me what it is. This was the picture given to them. Yeah. Now, according to me, it is an old grandmother kind of woman who's just woken up from her sleep and her little cat is waiting next to her bedside. And what happened was, and I was very pleasantly happy and surprised that the girl with the short hair, wearing shorts and t-shirt in the class on that day, said that, ma'am, this is an old man and he's woken up from his sleep and he's very happy probably because he had a good dream and now he's going to feed his cat. So I asked her, but just look at her. She has a bun, she's wearing earrings, she's wearing a sari. So isn't she a woman? Isn't she a grandmother or an old lady? And she said, no, ma'am, I have seen men wearing earrings and a dress like this in South India. And with just that, those 10 minutes that I spent with those 10 children, I had made them see the world differently, where they not only looked at things differently, they also convinced others to look at things differently. And that was the most beautiful thing that happened with me that week. And that really put my faith back into the fact that the stories that we listen to and narrate to our children have a lot of power. So this was just one example from my life. And I'm going to give you a few more in the talk. Yeah, we have 1 hour. Okay, so that's good time. I'm going to, this was a quote that actually I very strongly believe in. It was spoken in my introduction as well. And this is what I really, really strongly believe in. The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you the questions to think upon. And it's by a writer called Brandon Sanderson. And what this really means is that when I, for example, narrated the story of the boy and the girl, Fatima and Rahul, I gave them so many different contexts to it. I made them think that it's okay for a boy to play with the girl. And I also slyly put the fact that people from different cultures and religions should be friends, and girls dress differently. And yeah, so there were like 3 or 4 kind of concepts that were shared with them without really telling them how to think, but it gave them questions to think upon from the practices that they probably have been having earlier. So I'm going to share this. It's the continuation of the same talk by Chimamanda. And I think...
Years later, I thought about this when I left Nigeria to go to university in the United States. I was 19. My American roommate was shocked by me. She asked where I had learned to speak English so well and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. She asked if she could listen to what she called my tribal music and was consequently very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. She assumed that I did not know how to use a stove. What struck me was this: she had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position toward me as an African was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of a connection as human equals. So after I had spent some years in the US as an African, I began to understand my roommate's response to me. If I had not grown up in Nigeria, and if all I knew about Africa were from popular images, I too would think that Africa was a place of beautiful landscapes, beautiful animals, and incomprehensible people fighting senseless wars, dying of poverty and AIDS, unable to speak for themselves, and waiting to be saved by a kind white foreigner. I would see Africans in the same way that I, as a child, had seen Fide's family. This single story of Africa ultimately comes, I think, from Western literature. Now, here's a quote from the writing of a London merchant called John Locke, who sailed to West Africa in 1561 and kept a fascinating account of his voyage. After referring to the black Africans as beasts who have no houses, he writes, "They are also people without heads, having their mouths and eyes in their breasts." Now, I've laughed every time I've read this, and one must admire the imagination of John Locke. But what is important about his writing is that it represents the beginning of a tradition of telling African stories in the West, a tradition of sub-Saharan Africa as a place of negatives, of difference, of darkness, of people who, in the words of the wonderful poet Rudyard Kipling, are half devil, half child. And so I began to realize that my American roommate must have, throughout her life, seen and heard different versions of this single story.
Okay, so I think all of you will identify with this phenomenon where we as children and even as adults are fed certain stories and only one narrative from different sources. It could be our grandparents, parents, family, friends, and media, movies, all of the stories that we come across in our daily lives feed a certain narrative and only one narrative, whether it is about a certain kind of practice, a certain kind of people, a certain kind of culture, a certain way of life. We're always told to think of things in a certain way. And that's why I am against the idea of us telling people how to think. And because that kind of is very disrespectful to them. A, because you're not allowing them to think on their own. And B, you're also restricting their ideas with what you feel is right. And a lot of you as educators, including me, I am guilty of it as much as you, think that our way of thought is the right thing to do. And even in the beginning of when I asked the question, the purpose of education, a lot of you said that I want to share my knowledge and my thoughts and my ideas. But that is a problem of the world, that everybody thinks that their thoughts, their ideas, and their beliefs are the way forward. And then there lies the danger of forcing them upon our students, right? It could be as simple a fact that you think that this child is irresponsible. And that is your story of that child. Maybe that child is different in different subjects, in different scenarios, in different situations. So sometimes, actually I would say all the time, our beliefs must be questioned and changed and squeezed and thrown away if they don't work for the world that we're trying to create around us. And that is something which I think is the dangerous part of education and being a teacher. And I'm as guilty as you. And I have, in the beginning of my career, I was like all of you, ready to go out, change the world. The world is not an easy place to change because it is already existing with all these narratives and stories that exist from thousands of years. So firstly, you have to question those. And then you have to question the workings of the world around you and then question your own self and change it. And then try and make a difference to the children around you. So it's a very difficult endeavor to undertake, but it is thoroughly, thoroughly important. And even like as individuals and educational institutes, we have a certain way of behavior. The girls are asked to dress in a certain way, whereas boys are not. The girls are asked to behave in a certain way, whereas boys are not. You can't wear this, the boys can wear that, So the whole idea of this society that exists is questionable, because that is where the problem lies. Like, that is the bottom of the problem. So whatever we do from the top will be of really no use if we don't try and change our own understanding of these things that we've created, these rules that we've created, these stories that we've created around us. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next thing. Okay, let me show you this next clip from Adishi's talk. The whole talk is available on TED, but I've just picked out certain things which I think are important for the discussion today. And this is a very important aspect, because we all have been brought up with this. It is the second clip, the story told to us.
I come from a conventional middle-class Nigerian family. My father was a professor. My mother was an administrator. And so we had, as was the norm, live-in domestic help who would often come from nearby rural villages. So the year I turned 8, we got a new houseboy. His name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. My mother sent yams and rice and our old clothes to his family. And when I didn't finish my dinner, my mother would say, "Finish your food. Don't you know people like Fide's family have nothing?" So I felt enormous pity for Fide's family. Then one Saturday, we went to his village to visit. And his mother showed us a beautifully patterned basket made of dyed raffia that his brother had made. I was startled. It had not occurred to me that anybody in his family could actually make something. All I had heard about them was how poor they were, so that it had become impossible for me to see them as anything else but poor. Their poverty was my single story of them.
So this is something that happens to us. We are told to believe certain things about certain people. I was told those things when I was growing up. When I became marriageable, I was told that it's okay only to marry people of certain culture, of certain caste, of certain communities. And these are the beliefs that need to be questioned. And it is our responsibility as adults, as educators, as change makers, who want to create that world that you spoke of in the beginning of the talk today, is that are we really questioning our own selves, our own surroundings, our own families, so that we can make this a better place for our children and for the future. And I think the need for doing that has increased as the days go by, because of the narratives that are fed to us every single day. So we have to stop this war against each other and realize that we are all in this together. And we should also stop believing the stories that we are told, because they make us not think on our own. They are telling us to think in a certain way. They're not allowing us to think as who we want things to be like. Okay? So I'm going to narrate a story now, which I wrote this morning, especially for you all. And then I'm going to tell you why I think many stories are important. Okay? Okay. Once upon a time, in the southern lands, there lived a very wise king. He was the wisest king that had ever existed on earth. He had a beautiful sister who he loved very deeply. She was a very strong, independent woman, and she always went for what she wanted in life. Nobody could stop her. She had been gifted with enormous beauty, beautiful big eyes, sharp features, and smooth chocolate skin. She was the most sought after woman in her land. And yet, she had not given herself to anybody yet. She loved to travel to faraway lands and discover new cultures and meet new people and learn new things about them. And on one such travel adventure, she met somebody, the kind of people who she had never seen before. They were different from all the men that she had met before. Their features were different, they were much leaner, and she was very curious to get to know them better. So, the independent, strong woman that she was, she looked at the man and he looked at her in return. But he looked at her, squinted his eyes, and turned away. She thought that the man was a shy man. So she approached him and proposed to speak to him and befriend him. She had never seen anyone like him before. Because she looked so different from him, he thought she was ugly. So ugly that he did not even want to speak to her. Forget befriend her. So just to make fun of her, he asked her to go become friends with his brother, to play a prank on him and her. This was his naughty idea. The open-minded woman that she was, she went and tried to speak to his brother. He was as good looking as he was, and she didn't mind becoming friends with him either. But both the brothers exchanged some glances, which meant that they both thought of her as someone ugly. So ugly that she should not even dare to be friends with them. She spoke differently, her language was different, the way she looked was different. She was not as beautiful as the women that they had been with. They rejected her friendship, and she felt very insulted. She decided that she's going to challenge the women of that land to a competition of brains, beauty, and strength. Now, the problem with this was that the women in that land were always made to sit and do nothing. Their job was to look after the house and be at home, take care of the husbands, and always live in their shadow, and to look a certain way to be pleasing to their husband's eyes. The men in the land saw this lady challenge the women, and this scared them. They realized that if she won the competition, the women will start to idolize her, would want to start to become like her, would want to start to become independent, outspoken, go-getter, confident, and also not try to look a certain way to please the men. And this made them feel threatened. And so, just the day before the competition, the two brothers sneaked at night to the Rashmi, could you put yourself on mute, please? Thanks. At night, they sneaked near her house where she was staying in the northern land. They took out the bottle of acid and threw it on her while she slept. The princess woke up screaming, burning, her skin melted, her limbs melted, and her face was disfigured, her fingers were burnt out, and she was miserable. After getting better, but without having the kind of face and beauty and limbs that she had, she returned back to the southern land and narrated this incident to her brother. Her brother, the wisest king the world had ever seen, was enraged and wanted revenge from the two brothers. Okay? So this was the story that I wrote this morning. And I'm not sure if it did strike a chord with any of you, If it did, if you think you could relate it to any story that you've heard earlier, you can unmute yourself and tell me, who did it remind you of? It is a very famous story.
Ma'am, it may be
This is
Lakshmi Agrawal.
Monica,
Yeah,
tell me.
it's Lakshmi Agrawal.
Lakshmi Agarwal. Okay. The lady, okay. It is actually, this happens to a lot of women around us. But I'm talking about like a famous story from like stories that we've heard as children. Okay, fine. No problem. What I want you to do is in the chat box, tell me who was at fault. Whose fault was it? Was it the woman's fault? The princess's fault for approaching people who looked different from her? Was it the women from the land who were not strong enough to compete with this princess? Was it the brother who was enraged and wanted revenge? Or was it the two brothers who attacked her dignity and left her miserable for life?
Yeah, people are writing in chat box. They're writing two
There were
brothers.
two brothers, yeah? Okay. Now, I'm going to disclose something which will leave you shocked, okay?
Also, it was the society that the two brothers grew up.
Yes, it is. We are all victims of the societies we grow up in, and so were they. And
the
so are all the
circumstances,
rapists.
yeah, same thing.
Yeah. So are the rapists, so are the murderers, so are the people who actually throw acid on women, who consider them as their property. Yes, these are the problems that exist in our society, and this is one story. This is one version of the story that we all have grown up with. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for all your answers. And here is the bubble that I'm going to burst, because this was the story of Shrupnakha from the Ramayana.
Yes.
It was the modified version, my version of it. Okay. And this is something that we all have been brought up with. We all have heard one story of the Ramayana, whereas 300 stories exist. Yeah, there is one version that has been glorified and written and rewritten and rewritten and rewritten to make us believe a certain narrative about certain people. And it has been...
Ram Leela also has 300 versions.
Yes, it does. And unfortunately, we as a society have heard only one version. We look at things in one perspective, and that's the only one that gets shared over and over and over, generations and generations and generations. Okay, and that is the problem with our society. If you go down south in Sri Lanka, there is a version which tells you how wonderful Ravan is. Yeah, the version that tells you, there's one version which tells there's one version which says that Ravan and Sita had sex. But the version that we've been told is that he didn't touch her because she also refused it, because that's the correct way to be. Yeah. And Sita left her home and comfort to go with Ram because it was a duty. It's a duty of the wife, not because of love. And that's why that is the problem with the narratives that we've been told all of our lives, that we're forgetting the emotions, but we're putting people in boxes with responsibilities that a woman is supposed to do this. Why and who made these rules, and why do these stories, who are these people writing these stories, and so much and so much and so much, over and over and over again, that it's become a part of the culture. the religious practices, the way of life. And that's the power of a story. That's the danger of a single story. And it's our responsibility now to start looking at different perspectives and to understand who wrote these stories. I'm just going to play one last clip, which is for me the most powerful one. And you will understand what I mean by all of these questions that you need to start asking yourself and everything around you.
As had a professor who once told me that my novel was not authentically African. Now, I was quite willing to contend that there were a number of things wrong with the novel, that it had failed in a number of places, but I had not quite imagined that it had failed at achieving something called African authenticity. In fact, I did not know what African authenticity was. The professor told me that my characters were too much like him, an educated and middle-class man. My characters drove cars. They were not starving. Therefore, they were not authentically African. But I must quickly add that I too am just as guilty on the question of the single story. A few years ago, I visited Mexico from the US. The political climate in the US at the time was tense, and there were debates going on about immigration. And, as often happens in America, immigration became synonymous with Mexicans. There were endless stories of Mexicans as people who were fleecing the healthcare system, sneaking across the border, being arrested at the border, that sort of thing. I remember walking around on my first day in Guadalajara, watching the people going to work, rolling up tortillas in the marketplace, smoking, laughing. I remember first feeling slight surprise, and then I was overwhelmed with shame. I realized that I had been so immersed in the media coverage of Mexicans that they had become one thing in my mind, the abject immigrant. I had bought into the single story of Mexicans, and I could not have been more ashamed of myself. So that is how to create a single story. Show a people as one thing, as only one thing, over and over again, and that is what they become. It is impossible to talk about the single story without talking about power. How they are told, who tells them, when they are told, how many stories are told, are really dependent on power. Power is the ability not just to tell the story of another person, but to make it the definitive story of that person. I recently spoke at a university where a student told me that it was such a shame that Nigerian men were physical abusers like the father character in my novel. I told him that I had just read a novel called American Psycho, and that it was such a shame that young Americans were serial murderers. Now, obviously, I said this in a fit of mild irritation, but it would never have occurred to me to think that just because I had read a novel in which a character was a serial killer, that he was somehow representative of all Americans. And now, this is not because I'm a better person than that student, but because of America's cultural and economic power, I had many stories of America. I had read Tyler and Updike and Steinbeck and Gateskill. I did not have a single story of America. The single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. I've always felt that it is impossible to engage properly with a place or a person without engaging with all of the stories of that place and that person. The consequence of the single story is this: it robs people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. It emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar. So what if before my Mexican trip, I had followed the immigration debate from both sides, the US and the Mexican? What if my mother had told us that Fide's family was poor and hardworking? What if we had an African television network that broadcast diverse African stories all over the world? What the Nigerian writer Chinua Achebe calls a balance of stories. Stories matter. Many stories matter. Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity. I would like to end with this thought, that when we reject the single story, when we realize that there is never a single story about any place, we regain a kind of paradise. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the power of stories. And the reason why I shared the Shupnaka version of the story with you was to also for you to start understanding that there are myths that we have grown up with. And these are mythical tales which have become a part of our culture and society. And it's important to then start questioning what a myth is. It is a story, and these are fictional characters. They are, as Chimanda spoke, they are also the stories written in a certain narrative because of the power that was held in the hands of one person at that point in time. So it could be, I could just give you a very relatable example of, let's say, a girl and a boy in a relationship. Okay. Now, for whatever reason, the relationship fails and they separate their ways. If you hear the girl's version, she will tell you the problems that existed with the boy. So if you are her friend and if you listen to her story, you will believe that the boy is the villain. And vice versa. If you listen to the boy's version of the story, you will understand that the girl was the villain in the story. So that is why it's very important to understand that the story can have different perspectives and narratives. And that's why I shared Chimanda's example as well. And I will tell you, this happens all the time in the history of the world. Okay. For example, if you look at the Ramayana, okay, the version that we've always been told is from Ram's perspective. He was the king, he was the one in power, he was glorified as, everything that anybody should be like and idolized. And now, after so many thousands of years, he's thought of as God. Yeah. And in spite of all his flaws and the mistakes he made, they are all like put under the carpet. Yeah, they're not glorified as much as other things are. Towards the end, Ram and Sita were separated. She left him because he didn't trust her and all of that, and they were separated. But we've not been forced that narrative that they are not separate. When we look at Ram, we always see Sita's photograph or statue with him, because that is the way we want the world to be. We want it to be together, woman, man have to be together, all of those things. Now things are changing and it's time we start questioning these stories as well. Another thing, and because we've suffered in the hands of British, and our whole economy and the state of affairs is miserable because of colonization. And Shashi Tharoor talks about it all the time. And it's very conveniently forgotten in the British history. So I have friends in London, okay, and they have not been taught about colonization in history. They do not know it happened. They don't know why it happened. They don't know the repercussions and the future of the countries that were colonized and the current state of the countries that the things that we face as colonies even till date. So that part of the history is completely erased. And we can see that happening today to our education system. Important things like rights and responsibilities and things which make us responsible citizens question the people in power are being removed from the books. So it's okay if they're removed. It doesn't mean that you can't teach them. Okay. And that's why it's important for us as teachers to change the narratives that exist. to make this a better world that you want to make, right? So I'm just going to give you one example of how I do it. It's a short clip from one of my very recent online performances. You can see how I have changed the narrative, and then I will take your questions. I think, yeah, this is the clip.
After a long day of searching for nuts, he came back to his tree hole and was tired and decided to go to bed. It was dark, and just as he was about to fall asleep, he heard some noise coming from just outside his tree. So he peeped, and let's see what he saw. Oh, what a beautiful land this is. Oh, very nice land. I like it. Oh, what beautiful trees. My name is Madani. I have a lot of money. I am a big industrialist, and I have come to the Himalayan forests to buy all the forest land, because I will cut all the trees and I will build an adventure park, a resort where people can come and spend time and spend their money. People don't like forest and trees. They only like to do these things in the resort, go to the swimming pool, sit on a ride in the adventure park. People don't like trees. That is why I am going to make an adventure park over here. Oh, you forest environmental minister, you are going to give me the land, okay? You cannot say no to Madani. ओहो सर जी, मेरा नाम है प्रकाश पेड़ काटकर. मैं हूँ यहाँ का एनवायरमेंटल मिनिस्टर. वो क्या है ना, ये जो फॉरेस्ट लैंड होती है ना, ये बेच नहीं सकते किसी को. इसको बचा के रखना है देश के लिए. लेकिन आप कह रहे हैं कि आपके पास बहुत पैसा है, तो आप थोड़ा पैसा मेरे पास ट्रांसफर कर दीजिए. तो आपका फॉरेस्ट, आप उस पे जो मर्जी कीजिए, पेड़ काटिए, हंटिंग कीजिए, हाँ जो मर्जी कीजिए जी. हाँ, आप तो हमारे दोस्त ही है ना. अब दोस्त दोस्त की मदद नहीं करेगा तो कौन करेगा? Don't worry, when Prakash पेड़ काटकर is here, sir ji. Noise again. It was a knock on his door. Let's see who it was. Gulacha got up angrily. Oh, nobody is letting me sleep. What is going on? What is going on in the forest? He got up, walked to the door, and he opened it. And right outside the door, he saw another squirrel standing just in front of him. Gulacha had never seen any other squirrel in the forest. He was a little surprised and a little irritated. So he looked at the squirrel and he said, Who are you? Why have you come here? Disturbing me early in the morning? You have no manners or what? Go away from here. Don't disturb me. I want to sleep. Who are you? The poor little squirrel who had come to visit him was very surprised to get this kind of response when he went to meet him. So he got a little scared and he said, Oh, गुलाचा जी, मेरा नाम भोलू है. मैं इस जंगल में नया आया हूँ. वो क्या है ना, जो मेरा जंगल है ना पास में, वहाँ पे जो पेड़ है ना जहाँ मैं रहता था, कुछ लोग आए और उन्होंने वो पेड़ काट दिया, तो मेरा घर टूट गया. तो मैंने सोचा कि क्यों ना मैं इस जंगल में आके रह लूं. आप यहाँ पे गिलहरी है ना, तो मैं भी गिलहरी हूँ ना, तो हम दोनों दोस्त हो सकते हैं ना. तो मैं आपसे दोस्ती करने आया हूँ. नमस्ते. Gulacha got irritated and he said, I don't need any friends. I don't want to be friends with anybody. Just get lost from here. Outsiders are not allowed in this forest. No immigrants. Get out, get out, get out. And he banged the door on Bholu's face. How rude.
Okay, so what I did, actually, the original story had just two squirrels. The tree gets cut off, and the other squirrel comes. This one doesn't like him, and then later on they became friends. But when I narrated the story, I put the idea of why trees are cut, who's cutting them, why are they being cut. It is also a collective responsibility for children to understand that when they are going to these adventure parks or they are going to these hotels and resorts, they are creating a demand for them. And because there is a demand, there are industrialists who obviously want economic power, are going to exploit it, and then it's all a game of power, right? And that's the thing that I changed in the narrative. And then I also included the aspect of immigration, how we look down upon people who come to our land, and we reject them because they are different from us. We are threatened because we've been told they will take away our jobs and things like that. And the people in power are telling us these stories because they don't want to be held responsible for not creating employment for all the people. So they are trying to give us these narratives where we are all fighting with each other, looking at showing us how different we are and not being collective, so that they can make the money and continue to be in power and keep us oppressed, right? So this was just one example which you can do even with the youngest of children. And this brings me to the end of whatever I had to share. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do next now.
Yes, I am here to do the further proceedings. So I must say you are a great storyteller, Priyanka. And we really enjoyed your session. It was amazing. And you have very beautifully described how the stories we read affect us. And thank you so much for explaining how to use stories as a tool to bring about a positive change in the classroom and in the society. I really like the idea of creating different narratives to fulfill the objectives of education and society. Very well illustrated session, Priyanka, and I can see a lot of appreciation in the chat box and also on YouTube. They are saying very well conducted session, very interesting exercises, very apt activities, good explanation from ma'am, and they are all loving your sessions and they have some questions as well. So if you permit, I will start asking questions, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
I can read a few already, which are here. Should I read the ones that I can see first?
Yes.
Okay. So Sindhu says, my research studies about teaching maths through storytelling for elementary schools. Can you suggest? Okay, so the chat has disappeared.
Yeah, actually, they have shared the screen. Monica, Dhara, if you can just, yes.
Yeah.
I think now you're able to.
Yeah, now I can see. Yeah. Maths through storytelling for elementary schools. Can you suggest a few books related to storytelling and education? So thank you for the question, Sindhu. I don't know too many books, but I'm sure if you Google, you will get a lot of resources on that. Because I do a lot of things on my own. I create my own content. I read a lot online, but there is no one particular book that I do. But when I do get my hands on something, I flip through it. But unfortunately, I haven't kept track of it, and I should actually. It's a good thing you brought it up. But for math, I would suggest, the simplest way, and I do that all the time in the classroom. And there is this one, I will share this with you. There is this one particular school that I was training teachers at, and I would go there every 2 months. I would sit through all their classes, give them feedback one-on-one on how to use drama and storytelling to teach all kinds of subjects. And there was this one time, one of the teachers, she was taking a math lesson in a grade 2 class. She came running to me. She said, I was teaching them addition and I made a story because she knows how passionate I am about stories. So she said, I made a story. It's a nonsense story, but I still tried. I said, very good. It's good that you tried. And what she said was, in my story, what I said is that imagine that mama is 7, the baby is 3. So mama and baby together is equal to papa, and that's why papa is 10. Okay, now it is a very nonsense story. It makes no sense at all. But when I heard this story, my heart sank. I died and I cried. And I cried for 5 minutes. And I'm not kidding. If I talk about it, I'll end up crying even now. Because why I was so upset with it was the fact that she had very unknowingly given less weightage to the mother, the woman, and given more to the man as 10. Now, the problem with this is not the fact that she gave less weightage. My problem with this is, number one, with the little girls who heard this story will think of themselves as lesser human beings because they have been given the body of a woman. So they will always imagine themselves as 7 and the man as 8. Now, if you look at the macro aspect of this, women are paid less than men in any field in the world, right? And this is just one example of where these stories come from. Secondly, why I felt so bad was not just for the child who hears the story in the class, but as themselves, but also to go back home, the boys and all the children will look at their own mothers as lesser than the father. And number 3 was the reason she actually did this was because she herself thinks of herself as lesser than her husband. Because women make less money than their husband. If I make 10 lakh rupees, a man making 5 lakh rupees is not going to be my partner. He will feel threatened. His family will not allow him to marry me. You know, this is just one example I'm giving you. But this inequality among the two genders has to be bridged. And that is why I think math is the place to actually start this and not create these differences in stories that you tell them. So when you're writing or teaching them these math problems, you know, we all read the train is coming at this speed and the train is coming at this speed and they bang or they don't bang, we don't know. But these are irrelevant. Then you need to ask that, you know, a man contributed X thousands of rupees to start his project. But because of red tapeism, his project was held and he was asked to deposit so much more money. Why not? Because that is the reality of our world. We should bring it out in the classroom and ask them to question these things so that they can make the changes as they grow. So this is just one example. Yeah.
Very well.
Okay.
How you brought values in the problems of the maths. It's really great.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So I'm just looking at the other questions. What is your opinion on deterrent stories? I do not understand the meaning of the word, Supriya. Can you tell me what is a deterrent story?
What I mean by that is nowadays children are not, if a child is not listening, you tell the child that you are not supposed to do this because someone else will come or something like, I mean, you try to scare a child or
Like,
I mean, not exactly scare a child, but it's more of not letting him do the wrong things by telling him by scaring him, you can say that way, you know. I mean, I don't know what is the right way to go ahead with this, but I want an answer, a view from you.
Yeah. I know what you're saying, actually. We do that all the time. And it is the narrative of that one child, which gets transferred from one class to another, from one teacher to another also. So for example, and this happens to us, okay, at the beginning of the year, the previous class teacher will tell you all the naughty kids' names and the ones that don't pay attention and all of that. Now you have to not believe it. Because if you believe it, which means you will then treat that child in that particular way. I'm told that all the time. There is a kid in my class. I was told at the beginning of the year, you please watch out for him. He's always distracted and always naughty. And then the first day of class, I said, Sumir, I've heard that you're very creative. Why don't you tell me what happens next in the story? And just by that, he became so attentive in my class because I had changed his narrative. I had made him go against what he thought about himself because he was told, Sumir, you're distracted all the time, focus all the time. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? So what? He's supposed to. Why shouldn't he? And that's why when parents come to me in the parent teacher meeting, these naughty kids and all in the classroom, they'll come, yes, miss, I heard my son is very naughty. And I'll be like, oh, really? I don't think so. He is very creative. And you should see the light on the parent's face because after having heard all the negative things about their child, when I tell them the child is creative and energetic and always enthusiastic to participate, they think of their child differently. They look at their child differently. And that is the power of stories that you create about your learners. So what if they are naughty? So what if they drop all the books? Give them time. The problem is now we all are in a hurry. We are all in a hurry for these children to just learn according to what we think is the right time to learn. If I am actually, and I'll tell you this, I do it all the time. If I have to make a PPT, I will take 5 hours. And that is why my pictures got lost. Yeah. But if you have to make a PPT, you may do it in 2 hours. But that doesn't mean I'm less competent. We have to stop our children from racing against each other. And I completely tell them, and I told you in the beginning of the class, you will not raise hands in my class. I do not allow it. For me, everybody has to do it, even if you take longer, even if you think you did a bad job. Yeah? I hope that answered your question, Supriya. Did it to some extent?
Yeah, to some extent.
Some extent, yeah.
Yeah.
Ma'am?
Okay. Yeah,
I
I like this.
Shambhavi here. Can I ask you a question instead of typing? Because I want to be in the detailed one. Actually, ma'am, regarding the observation, like we always teach small kids regarding the observation, observe the things. At home also they observe that the mom is in the kitchen, dad works, so girls should be in the kitchen, not like, the starting the root goes from itself. So what you will tell regarding this, ma'am? Because if we teach child from the childhood that there is no gender discrimination in boys can cook, boys can do, regarding that I just have a question for that, ma'am.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Thank you, Shambhavi, for sharing. And I may be the villain in this story. But the thing is, then you have to tell the child to start asking these questions at home. That, Daddy, why don't we cook? Like, or Mama, why don't you sit and watch TV and let me and Daddy cook together today for you? Give them the power. The children are beautiful minds. You have no idea how wonderful they are in questioning and bringing about these changes in their lives, in the lives of their parents. And you have to do it politely. It's very hard because, we all want to fight these wars that are inside us, but we have to do it also because we can change the system only when we are in it. We cannot change it from outside. And that is something I have learned over time. I mean, I have cried at school and howled in front of my kids because I feel helpless. But that's the reality. We cannot change the system if we are not in it. And you have to do it slyly. Be very sly, be very kind and loving. Do it with all your heart. And it happens. Yeah. I'm going to answer this question. Monica has asked me a very relevant question. Some schools do not allow you to share these versions of the stories, especially these mythological ones. What do you suggest? I can tell you what I do because there was Navratri and I got an offer. I get work all the time for storytelling, and I got an offer from somebody telling me to narrate the story of Navratri. And I'm not religious, as you may have already guessed. But I said, okay, I should be open-minded. What if it's a great story? I read about it. And the story spoke about a woman killing a lot of people, beheading, and in the process losing her beauty. Yeah, fair skin. Her skin became dark while fighting the wars. And because she changed the way she looked, her husband rejected her. And these are gods and goddesses. I'm not going to take names, but the goddess then became miserable because the god left her because her skin was not fair anymore. She went to the other god pleading for him to help her so that she could go back to looking beautiful again, conventionally beautiful. Gora log hi beautiful hote hain na. तो then वो भगवान ने उसको boon दे दिया, and then the beauty, the black part of her skin shed away and created another entity, and that was another goddess who then continued to fight wars and look ugly with her tongue out and all of that. And this one became like Apsara again, and the husband came back. Now, for me, this was a very dangerous story because it spoke about misogyny, about racism, about treating women as objectifying of women, of them, their job only being to look a certain way so she can please the man. So that's why I refused to narrate the story. I said it's against my principles. I will not do it. It's unethical. And the woman who offered it to me, I told her, you should feel about these things as a woman. But well, people want to make money and it's the popular culture. So Manika, I stay away from mythology. I don't do it. And I'm at a place in my life where I can refuse. But if you are, then try and change the narrative from the narrator. There is a very beautiful thing in storytelling called, what is that word? It's not sarcasm, it's another word for sarcasm, which is in a humorous way, satire. Yeah. So the way you can actually do it is through satire. You can create a narrative, and like how when we used to watch these television serials, there was Samay who would comment, right? You can create another Samay who would comment as an outsider eye on the story that you are telling. So even the fact that if Ram and Lakshman are cutting off Shrupnakha's nose, you can have as a pose, like if you're doing it as a play or something, you can have like a thunder and freeze, where the characters freeze, and then the Samay can speak. ये क्या बात हुई? उस जमाने में नाक काटना अलाउड था, और आज अगर आदमी औरत के ऊपर एसिड फेंकता है तो वो गलत है. ये तो बहुत ही गलत बात है. And you can comment on it. Yeah, and that's the beauty of storytelling, because you are not commenting as yourself, Monica. You are then commenting as another character, as the narrator of the story. So you have to do these naughty things to get your way out.
Yeah, Priyanka, there is one more question. Can you suggest some resources for economics teaching? Dr. Priyanka Jaiswal from YouTube, she's asking. She's watching.
I'll be very honest with you, I have always worked with really in the primary years. So I specialize in primary education. What I would suggest is that, to be honest, and I read this somewhere yesterday, that all learning can be free because everything is online now. We didn't have that when we were doing our B.Ed. So I would suggest that you try and find these stories yourself. And if you are teaching them economics, I mean, just the example of this industrialist story that I gave you, where we are teaching demand and supply, it can be there. Like the fact that, industries, the forests are being cut down because there is a demand for resorts and adventure parks, and people want to go to malls and buy. This is like, we've become corporate slaves. People want to go to bars and not the garden. So these are things that you can address. And then you're not only teaching them economics, you're also teaching them human behavior, work culture, lifestyle choices. So there is so much more depth in your lesson when you choose this as a story to teach them demand and supply. This is just one example that I gave you. I'm sure there are many that you will be able to think of now.
So Priyanka, I have one question. Are you conducting any workshops where teachers can hone their skills in storytelling?
Yes, there is one workshop coming up for professional teachers who are already there. But what I would love to do is actually do one specially for BTTC. For those who are interested, I can hold it privately just for you at a very nominal cost, because our regular workshops for professional teachers cost 4,500 for a 2-day workshop. But we could give a 50% discount to the students here, and it's something that you will learn, because the challenges here now, our children are very different from what they were 15 years ago. Yes, as you rightly said, they do not pay attention. Salome is saying that some of them are very shy, especially the teenagers, because they are having body issues and things like that. So storytelling is a very beautiful way to help them overcome these challenges and to engage all kinds of learners, especially the ones who don't pay attention, who are always jumping around. Yeah, the little girl who said that I've seen men wearing earrings, she's a jumper. She's always jumping on the chair during my class. So, but she's paying attention because she loves stories, and I hope I am a good teacher. But yeah, it helps you to achieve so much more in the classroom. So,
Yes.
Manisha ma'am, would you like me to put up the link, which there is a form that they
please put up the link so that they can, connect.
Just this is the last one here. If you guys are on Facebook or Instagram, these are the pages, and I'm going to share this Google link form.
Yeah, put it in the chat box.
I'll put it in the chat box.
Yes.
So that what you can do is just click on that and fill it up. And then I'll ask somebody to get in touch with you from my team, and we can pick an exact date.
We can do that.
For to do that.
And do you think this really adds to their qualification when they apply for the school jobs?
I really think it does, because to be honest, there are about, let's say, 10,000 teachers passing out every day from training institutes. So what happens then is that what gives you the edge from the others, how you engage the learners in the classroom. What's interesting is that this workshop can give you an understanding of what the classroom will be like, and how to engage all these different kinds of learners, and what are the skills you bring to the table, because you have it, right? And that's why having, somebody said that in yesterday's session, I can't remember who, they said that to be a good teacher, you don't have to be an expert in your subject. Yeah. And I think these are the skills that the schools are actually looking for today. So this will add to your resume. There is a certificate that comes with it, and it will definitely give you an edge, because then even when they call you for a demo lesson, you can actually show them what you have just besides the subject knowledge.
Yes, I feel it is very important, because nowadays there's a lot of competition and you have to be different. So this is the only way you can be different. So Priyanka, as you know, we have paucity of time and we would love to hear you more and more. But the thing is that it's 1 o'clock and we need to wind up. So once again, I thank you so much. And I would love that you be in touch with BTTC. And then we keep meeting maybe online and offline again and again. So thank you once again, Priyanka. It was a wonderful session. Now I request Ms. Dhara Shaha to propose formal vote of thanks. Ms. Dhara.
Miss Manisha, one last thing. I know a lot of you have these questions coming in. What I would suggest, message me separately. I've given you my Insta handles.
Yes.
So you can just message me on small_tails, follow me, and we can have a chat about it. You can be in the workshop, and then I have more time. It's a 2-day workshop. I'll have all the time to work with you individually as well.
Sure, we will definitely connect soon.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dhara?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I, Dhara Shah, on behalf of Bombay Teachers Training College and the entire fraternity of the institution, wishes a very good afternoon to one and all. It's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of those who really worked hard to make this webinar a successful one. I would like to express my sincere gratitude towards our resource person for today, Ms. Priyanka Bappar, on behalf of the entire BTTC family for a very insightful and enriching session on the power of storytelling in education. Storytelling is the most powerful way of communication in today's time. So, with the changing times, it has become very important to adapt to the new techniques of teaching and learning. And one of the great ways to teach our students is through storytelling. I am grateful to our in charge principal, Dr. Bhagwan Balani sir, for giving me this opportunity, and the Bombay Teachers Training College faculty members for their constant support and motivation. Thank you, Dr. Manisha Tyagi ma'am, for supervising and mentoring the session so well. I would also like to thank my co-volunteers for today, Ms. Monica Dixit, Ms. Inshira Sheikh, Ms. Anju Konai, Ms. Urmi Cheda, Ms. Bushra Sheikh, Ms. Salomi, and all our council members and the social media team for your dedication and constant hard work. I warmly express my special thanks to our wonderful audience for their generous support and being a part of this webinar session. Last but not the least, thank you, Team Bayer, for the technical assistance. Before we end this session, it gives me immense pleasure to announce about our tomorrow's session on project-based learning by Ms. Mahira Goel at 11 a.m. sharp. Now, I request everyone to please rise for the national anthem. Thank you.
You can stop now. So thank you, Priyanka. Thank you, all the students, volunteers. Thank you, everyone. And see you tomorrow. So thank you, Priyanka.
And I'll see you guys soon, hopefully in person. I miss